This is an introduction to classes and objects. So right now, our main program in Java is in a class called main, which you know by now, hopefully, that it needs to match the file name. But we are not creating objects from this class. So this one's a little bit different, and that's why we have to use this static keyword, but more on that later. So right now, we are going to create another class, and I'm going to put it in the same file. And I'm going to call this class employee. So notice I'm going to put it below the main class, below the closing brace of the main class. Okay, so what a class is, think of it as a blueprint for what an object is. An object would be an actual employee at your company, but a class defines what that object is or acts as a blueprint for that object. So right now, we're just going to define what an employee is by defining the variables associated with the employee. So I'm going to first start with, I'm going to say, okay, an employee has a name. So I'm creating a variable for that. And also, an employee has an hourly wage and also the hours worked. Okay, so for now, I'm just going to leave these three variables. You know, in the real world, you'd have hundreds of well, maybe dozens of variables for an employee. Okay, so now I have just defined what an employee is with this class definition, but I have not yet created an instance of the employee. And to create an instance employee, that is what we call an object. So up here in the main program, I'm going to create an object or an instance of the employee. To do that, you put the name of the class, space. Now you put what you want to name the object. You know, kind of like naming a variable. In this case, we're naming an object. I'm just going to put kind of a generic name, E1, employee 1. And then I'm going to put the equal sign in new employee. So I'm putting the name of the class again, but this time I'm putting in an opening, closing parentheses. So the new keyword is what actually creates the new object of the employee class. And we'll talk about that later, the open, close parentheses. Okay, so at this point, I have created a new employee object. And so I can start using that object. To use that object up here in the main program, I need to put the name I gave the object, which is E1, and then to access any of the variables, I put a dot, and then the name of the variable. So E1.name, I'll just put equals Kirk, like that. Okay, I'm going to give value to these other two variables. I'm just going to do it on the same line to save screen real estate for the sake of this recording. I'm not recommending doing this in reality, but just to save some screen real estate so you can see more code. So I'm just going to say E1 dot hourly wage is equal to 25, and then E1 dot hours worked is equal to 40, like that. Again, in reality, I would put each of these on the same line. Okay. Now, to output the information, I'll just put it in here. I'm going to put output E1.name plus, let's put wage is equal to And then I'm going to put the hourly wage, E1.hourly wage. And then I'll put hours equals plus E1 dot hours worked. Okay, so let's try to run it. Woohoo, no error. Okay, so here at output, Kirk wages equal to $25, hours is equal to 40. So let's just go ahead and define a second object. Right now we have one object of type employee. I'm just going to copy that and paste it. I'm going to create a second employee. We'll call it E2. And this one, I'll make the name equal to Liliana. Hours worked, well, hourly wage is equal to 30, and hours worked, I'll make that one equal to 30 also. And then to print it out, I'm just going to copy that line. And so E2.name, E2.hourly wage, and E2.hours worked. And so here we go. E2.name. Oh, because I forgot to change these right here. That will help. So when I'm defining the E2, I had the wrong variable name in there. So E2. So let's run it. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Okay, so let's go over the code again. So here is my class. That defines what an employee is. For now, an employee just has these three variables. And up here in main is I'm creating objects of type employee. So I create one object of type employee called E. I'm naming it E1. And then I can access the variables of E1 by saying E1.name, E1.hourly wage, and E1.hours worked. And now I'm creating a second object of type employee, and I'm naming it E2. And this employee, E2.name, is Liliana and has her hours, her hourly wage and hours worked. Okay? Okay. Now, let's add a method or a function down here in employee. So after we put the class variables, I can now put some methods down here. I'm going to have one that will get the paycheck. And the paycheck, we're just going to multiply these two variables together. So so writing that method, I'm going to put the return type, I'll call it a double, and then the name of the method, get paycheck. Open, close, I'm not sending it any arguments. And now the open, close brace. And now inside, I'm going to return the product of these two numbers, hourly wage times hours worked. So I'm just going to say return hourly wage times hours worked. So this method down here has access to the class variables. It has access to hourly wage and also to hours worked. So it's almost kind of like these class variables are global within the class when we define them like this. Okay, so now up here, we could put, I'm just going to make this a little simpler. And up here, I'm just going to call that method. I'm going to put paycheck is equal to, And now I'm going to call that method with e1.getPaycheck. And it's a method, so do your open close right there. And let's copy it for E2 now, employee 2, and get paycheck. And run it. And there we go. So it calculates, we call that method, and it calculates and gets it for both. Now, let's create a constructor method. So wouldn't it be nice up here if when I'm creating a new object of type employee, then what if I could put my initial values right up here? Like what if I could send it the name, comma, send it the hourly wage, comma, and send it the hours worked. That looks a whole lot cleaner. Let's do it up here. So employee 2, comma, hourly wage, comma, and hours worked for Liliana. So here, when I create a new object, I'm going to send it the initial values for the variables here as arguments. And so to do this, I need to create a constructor method to be able to send those values. And you should create your constructor method right below where you define your variables. So my constructor method is going to go here. And the constructor method is named the same as the class. And you do not put a return type. So employee. So a method named the same as the class. I'll just go ahead and do an empty one right here. Constructor method is named the same as class, as the class. Okay, so now what happens though, this is actually referring to that constructor method right here. And so it's a method, so I am sending it 3 arguments here, the name and then the wage and the hours. So since I'm sending it 3 arguments, I need to create 3 variables in here or parameters to collect those values. So I'm going to, the first one is going to be a string, and I'm going to just name it the name. Notice it's, it's different than this one up here. This is a different variable than this one right up here, because this one is collecting the values being sent, comma, and then double the hourly wage, comma, double the hours. And so now that these variables again are being sent to these parameter variables right here. So now all I need to do is make my class variables equal to these parameter variables. So I'm going to say name is equal to the name. And again, I'm just going to put multiple statements in one line, just get more stuff on the screen for the video. And then I'm going to put hourly wage is equal to the name of the parameter, the hourly wage. And then I'm going to put hours worked is equal to the parameter, the hours worked. I'm going to change the name of that just to be consistent. The hours worked. Okay, let's try it out. See if there's any errors. Nope. Okay, it still works good. Okay, so the constructor method. So it runs one time when you create a new object. So when I say new employee, this right here refers to that constructor method. And so that allows me to send the initial values. Now, the constructor method can do other things, which we'll demonstrate later, in addition to just collecting arguments for the initial values of the class variables. You can do other calculations, do other setups. You're basically constructing an object. So everything you want to do in the beginning to construct an object. Okay, so now I'm going to erase all this and do a second example. So get rid of this class and all of this right here. So let's create a class called Piggy Bank. We're going to define what a piggy bank is. So I'm just going to define it by what it contains. A piggy bank will contain coins. Namely, it will contain pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters. So these are the class variables that tell how many pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters are in a piggy bank. And once again, I have not yet created a piggy bank. Piggy bank defines or is the blueprint for what a piggy bank is. Okay, so to create a piggy bank up here in main, I'm going to put the word piggy bank. And let's name it, I'm going to name it oink equals new piggy bank, open, close. Okay, so I'll just run, there's no output. I'm just running to make sure there's no errors yet. Okay, good. So now I could access the class variables right up here. I could say oink dot dimes is equal to 4, or oink dot pennies is equal to 3. Okay, so I could define my class variables. I can access my class variables by putting the name of the object I created, then a dot, and then the name of the class variable. But let's send the initial values through the constructor. Let's say pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters. Let's say I'm going to send it 42, 8, 14, 7. So I'm going to initialize when I create oink. I'm going to initialize with 42 pennies, 8 nickels, 14 dimes, and 7 quarters. And to do that, I'm going to need a constructor class to take these arguments right here. And the constructor class is going to be named the same as the, not the constructor class, the constructor method will be named the same as the class, piggy bank. Constructor method named the same as the class. Oops. I'll just call it constructor. So that autocomplete did all that. Okay, and so now I need to declare variables to take on these arguments right here. So the parameter variables will be int. I'm going to name it the pennies, comma, the nickels, comma, the dimes, and comma, the quarters. Okay, so 42 gets passed to the pennies, 8 gets passed to the nickels, 14 gets passed to the dimes, and 7 gets passed to the quarters. Now what I need to do is make my class variables equal to these parameter variables. Oh, I just made a mistake. I need int in front of each one of these. I thought something looked funny. Just like you do in any method, you have to put the variable type in front of each one. Okay, so now I'm just going to say pennies is equal to the pennies, comma, nickels is equal to the nickels, semicolon, dimes is equal to the dimes, semicolon, and quarters is equal to the quarters right there, semicolon. Okay, I'm just going to run it. Still no output, just to make sure there's no errors. Okay, good. Okay, so once again, I sent my initial values for pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters to the constructor. See, this is referring to the constructor method right here, that piggy bank. And so those got sent to these parameter variables here. And so I'm making the class variables equal to these parameter variables right here. Okay, and so that will give me the initial values when I create an object. Okay, so we still don't have any output. Remember, we can still access, let's just say I can still access I can access these class variables up here. I could say oink dot quarters plus plus. I'm just going to add a quarter. So right now I initialized it with 7 quarters, and so this will make it equal to 8 quarters right here. Okay, so now let's output system.out.println. Let's say oink has, and now let's output the value of oink. But I want to create a method to calculate the dollar value. So let's say oink dot, I'm going to create a new method, and let's call it get value, like that. And so the get value method is going to calculate the dollar value and return it. So I'm going to create that method down here, get value. So this method will have a return type of a double, and the name of the method, get value. And I'm not sending it anything. I don't need to send it anything. It has access to these class variables. Okay, and so now I'm just going to return the dollar value of all those class variables. And that would be pennies times 0.01 plus nickels times 0.05 plus dimes times 0.1 plus quarters times 0.25. Okay, so that will calculate the value and send it right up here. Let's try it out. Okay, so there we go. Oink has $4.22. And what you're seeing here is a rounding error. Let me see what happens if I do a float right here. See what it thinks about that. It didn't like that at all. Oh, well. Okay, well, we're not going to, I'm not going to mess with that for right now. The double get value. Okay, we'll just keep that rounding error for right now. Really, we should, turn that into two decimal points. It's a floating point error. So you see that in a lot of different programming languages. Okay, so now, so that works pretty good. Now, right here, I just added another quarter to oink. So one thing we could do, what if we added some more methods here? What if I said add quarters 1? So what if I added a method called add quarters? So it allows me to add a quarter. So let's make it 3 quarters. Okay, so to do that, I'll just put it up here because this is going to get scrolled down. So I am sending through a certain number of quarters to be added to the piggy bank. Now, I'm not returning anything. I'm just adding quarters. It doesn't need to return anything. So no return type. And then the name of the method, add quarters, but I am sending it the number of quarters, which will be an int variable. Let's just call it num quarters. Yeah, I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to make it num. Okay, so whatever I send it is going to be passed to this variable num. And so now I just need to add that to my class variables. Don't make quarters equal to num. You need to add those. So I'm going to say quarters plus equals num. So we're adding those quarters right there. And so you could do the same thing with these other variables right here. You could add these additional methods if you want to be able to add quarters to it. Okay, let's run it one more time. So it's working. We're still getting our little floating point error right there. So it now has $4.72. So let's just to verify that it works. What if I add 4 quarters to oink? It should be closer to $5 now. Okay, yeah, so we're almost at $5 right now. Okay, so there you go is another example of a class. And in this case, we've only created one object of type piggy bank. And we named it oink. Okay, so that is all I was going to cover in the first video for Introduction to Classes. So,
everyone have a great day.